There we go.
Hey, y'all. Good evening, Luqman Nation. This is Jacqueline Luqman.
And I'm Abdul Shahid Luqman.
And welcome to Live and Coffee Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation.
The most dangerous show on the internet.
I always
keep on saying that.
I always forget that. It is Sunday, February 18th, the day after we entered Wakanda.
Exactly. Yep.
And the whole show tonight, the entire show, is going to be about the movie Black Panther. So we need to say right off the top, right off the break, yes, there are going to be spoilers in this show. If you have not seen this movie, Black Panther, and you don't want to talk about, you don't want to hear any spoilers, stop watching.
And we understand.
We understand. we do.
Understand.
This will be here for you all later after you watch the movie, so you can kind of relate. But we don't want to spoil anything for anybody. But we got to talk about this movie because it is. There's so much. There's a lot. So as usual, we've got some friends over on our Facebook page.
Yep. I'd like to give a shout out to Welcome Doug, Patricia Austin. My old classmate Icky Murray.
Hey, Icky.
Michelle Novello, and I believe we have others that I don't see right now. But those of you that I do see, like to welcome you to Coffee, Current Events, and Politics, the most dangerous show on the internet. And why do we call it the most dangerous show on the internet?
Why do we?
Well, Jackie, it's the most dangerous show on the internet because here we don't pull punches. Here you're going to get the unadulterated truth. A lot of times you're going to get opinions that aren't popular. And Coffee, Current Events, and Politics is designed to give our views, politics, our political views through a Pan-Africanist perspective. So that's why we exist.
Yep. And as usual, you got our family and friends over here on YouTube. We got the early birds, Lisa Webb and Juliet Lee and Shirley
Lisa.
Vick. What's going on, y'all?
Shirley Vick, all right.
So we try to start our broadcast off now with just to give people time to get on. Share this video. Share this video. Make sure you put in the introduction that there will be spoilers.
Right.
But do share our video, y'all, because we want as many people as possible in on this conversation because it's a very important conversation.
Yeah, and start inviting your friends right now.
Yes, invite your friends. Y'all on YouTube, share the link. So subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you're not already a subscriber. You can find us on YouTube under Luqman Nation, LuqmanNation. Follow us on Twitter, Luqman Nation with the number 1, all one word. You can find us on Facebook. Search for Luqman Nation. We've got Coffee, Current Events, and Politics in Luqman Nation. We've got Friends of Coffee, Current Events, and Politics in Luqman Nation for some of the lighter stuff.
Right.
And all the time it's not even lighter stuff, but still. And then we also have Brick by Brick in Luqman Nation, which is
the if you like history.
Yeah.
And if you like to know how we got here, we examine the historical roots of those things. And we also got, for those who like a more harder edge, no frills, adult content, then join me.
Adult content.
Join me on Pitbull and Politics. We just moved Pitbull and Politics to Monday. So tomorrow there will be an episode on Monday on Pitbull and Politics. But Pitbull and Politics is on Spreaker. So that is a podcast. And you can go on Spreaker and get that. And you can go on our page and get it from there too.
Yes. So I'm sharing some of this video a little bit. So and I want to especially, and I normally don't do this, but we went to the screening last night at what was it, the Majestic movie theater, Majestic IMAX in Silver Spring,
Maryland.
In Maryland or Maryland, as it's correctly pronounced here in the DMV.
Right.
We went to a screening that was arranged by our favorite radio station, WPFW 89.3 FM. WPFW is a Pacifica network station. Their tagline is Jazz and Justice.
Jazz and Justice, right.
And they do exactly what you think they do. They focus a lot on social issues, racial issues, a lot of issues revolving around advocacy for DC residents. There's a big problem with gentrification here as it is in other cities. There are tenants' rights organizations. Right. There are union efforts that are going on. There are shows dedicated to supporting union workers in hospitals and at the airports. And so that's what WPFW does.
That's right.
Very pro-black, pro-worker, pro-working class, pro-social justice. There are some great LGBTQIA shows on there. Some fabulous shows that focus on Latin music and the history of Latin music and the political. Just WPFW does some just amazing work.
And what I like about it, that now that we're in the age of social media, you could be anywhere, and they have a website, so you can listen to their shows on the web, on their website at WPFW, and see what we're talking about.
Yeah, so we went to WPFW, arranged this screening of Black Panther last night, and they had a panel discussion after the screening, which, you got to be serious about your politics when you will have a screening, have a panel discussion about the themes in a comic book movie.
Right.
All right. So the movie is that serious. For some
of us.
For some of us, it's that serious.
It was well, because you got these different, the movie attracted people for different reasons. And some of us on the political spectrum, or who follow politics and political education, the movie was a little bit more than just viewing a movie. So we had some local heavyweights, Dr. Jared Ball, and who else was there?
Dr. Jared Ball, Dr. Todd Burrows, who has written a great book about the evolution of the Black Panther comic and the Black Panther character, and the juxtaposition of that evolution to Black politics, especially Black liberation politics. Rissikat, I cannot pronounce her last name correctly, but she is a stalwart fixture on WPFW. Let's see, what's the other guy's name? It's on my timeline. Let me see, because I couldn't remember everybody's names last night, but Dr. Jared Ball helped me, and he filled in people's names.
Right.
So with a shout out to Dr. Jared Ball, thank you for correcting. Let me make sure I get those names up. But we want to start this conversation while I'm looking for this post. We want to start this conversation with talking about what we loved about this movie, because while we understand that not everybody is on the same level of political thought that we're on, and we're not on the level that some other people are on. For some people, this movie was very important because of the symbolism, and the symbolism was important.
Right, exactly.
Right. So what were your thoughts? What did you really love about this movie?
Well, first of all, let's start off from the beginning, because Wakanda, which is the fictional, I should say,
fictitious or fictional,
African kingdom that is highlighted in the Black Panther movie. The Black Panther character, believe it or not, is of course we know is a Marvel comic character, but the Black Panther character was actually created by two Jews. I think it was Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Who Jack Kirby was given credit, because a lot of people were very concerned that Kirby would not be given credit because this was part of his baby. But he was given credit in the credits of the movie. I mean, Stan Lee has been really good about being honest about who contributes what to his money making venture.
Right. So anyway, so we wanted to talk about where that Wakanda, even though it's a fictional place, that it is rooted in history. And here on Luqman Nation, we love to give you the history and connect the dots. So what we're going to do before we get into the more political and social content of what we gathered from the Black Panther movie Jackie, you're going to share about the actual place that Wakanda was based upon.
Right. And so I did find the post. Before I do that, I did find the post. Last night, the panel discussion was led by Dr. Jared Ball, who is he created the I Mix What I Like show that we loved on WPFW. You can follow his work on imixwhatilike.org, I think. You can find him on Facebook, Dr. Jared Ball. But the other people on the panel were Jabari Exum, who is a choreographer.
Yes, and he's from DC.
And he's not just from DC.
He's from Southeast.
That brother's from Southeast.
Right.
He's from not the hood. He from the hood.
Right.
He from the hood. And he choreographed the African dance and spirituality, the African spirituality scenes.
And the drumming.
And the drumming in the movie. Just so wonderful, wonderful, great stuff. And Risikat Okedeyi. Sorry if I butchered your name, but I hope Dr. Ball and Risikat can join, and Jabari too. So let's talk about where Wakanda, the idea of Wakanda, might have come from. Black Panther's mythical home may not be so mythical after all. This is from NPR. WAMU is our local NPR affiliate. This article is from February 10th. This was actually originally published in May of last year because the buzz around Black Panther has been, building for a year, more than a year.
Yeah,
more than a year, because us comic book geeks, when we found out there was going to be a movie made about Black Panther, we were like, get out of here.
Right.
They're making a movie about the one black comic guy in the Marvel universe that we all love. Yeah, it was, we were hyped for a long time. So, okay. For new fans of Black Panther, there is an overview of the character, T'Challa, and of Wakanda. So here is where this gets very interesting. There are different theories about the real life inspiration for Wakanda. Ta-Nehisi Coates, who authored a reboot of the Black Panther comic series, explained his in a post that he did for the Atlantic's website. There's a link there. We are, absolutely going to give you a link to this article so you can go read that. But the actor Chadwick Boseman, who plays Black Panther on screen, told the New York Times that Wakanda is a fictional version of the Mutapa Empire of 15th century Zimbabwe.
Oh, wow.
This is just fascinating to us. So how does the mythical Wakanda compare to the real life Mutapa? Stretching from modern day, there's a little map there, you see how big it was, stretching from modern day South Africa into Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Zambia, the kingdom of Mutapa thrived from the early 1400s to about 1760. So that's 360 years, more than 3.5 centuries.
And let's mention that was also during the slave trade.
Right. Mutapa operated on 3 basic levels. They had a capital city, provinces, and little villages. This is very interesting because of the way Wakanda was displayed in the movie. For those of you who've watched the movie, when you see the approach to Wakanda the first time, you see these little villages, that look like they're sparsely populated on the outskirts of this vast mountain range. And then you see this shrouded, hidden, additional mountain range come into view. Then you see more population inside this mountain range that is Wakanda. But then there is another region deeper into the interior of Wakanda that is the capital city of Wakanda. Wakanda mirrors the way, it seems that Wakanda mirrors the way ancient Mutapa was laid out.
Right, exactly.
Oh, so I thought that was very interesting. This is from Professor Angelo Nicolaides of the University of South Africa. He said chiefs ruled at each of these levels under the supreme authority of the king, known as the, please forgive me if I butcher this, Mutapa. That was the name of the king and of the Mutapa kingdom. Like so many other kingdoms that believe in the divine right of kings, the Mutapan people believed that their leaders were placed in positions of authority by the creator. The oral tradition tells us that they were involved in ancestral worship to a large extent, also a very key part of the Black Panther movie. And the people believed that the kings had a very good relationship with the spirit world. The relationship between the king and the spirit world, particularly the process of the new king ascending to the throne.
Right.
He had to interact with the spirit world,
which is the ancestral realm.
Which is the ancestral realm in Black Panther. This is actually very common of a lot of African culture.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So the writers did a good job of sticking to a lot of traditional, what might be ancient African cultures. I think they did a pretty good job of giving us a view of Africa as something very different from the dark, savage,
the way that Africa is commonly portrayed.
Right, as dark and savage and brutal and violent. Right. Yes. We'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that though too. Okay, so if the kingdom of Mutapa had a superpower, it would be a staggeringly effective trade system. Most kingdoms in southern Africa are known for their military might and great dictators, says Edward Mabaya from Cornell Institute for Food, Agriculture, and Development. Mutapa stands as a symbol of economic success through local, regional, and international trade. Mutapa's equivalent of Black Panther's precious vibranium, which is the resource that
made them the technologically advanced and prosperous kingdom that they were.
But what was Mutapa's equivalent of vibranium? Gold, and lots of it. They had resources of very rich gold in the valley to the east of modern-day Harare in Zimbabwe. The king maintained ownership of all the mines in Mutapa, the exact locations of which were kept secret under penalty of death.
A very important theme in the Black Panther.
Extremely important theme in why, in the reason Wakanda was shrouded from the outside world.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to protect the vibranium.
Right. In addition to gold, he said, Mutapa's most valuable resources were ivory, salt, and cotton. Mutapa traded extensively within its own borders, but the kingdom also established prolific trading networks with Europe, Asia, and Northern Africa. Archaeological excavations have uncovered Chinese porcelain, Indian heads, and Portuguese cloth in the Mutapa region. That's an especially impressive feat, explains Mabaya, when one considers the geographic limitations of the area, because Mutapa is not on a major river or ocean that would give it natural advantage for transport infrastructure. Through bustling local bazaars and strategic partnerships with Portuguese traders along the coast, Mutapa was able to achieve unparalleled trade against all odds for about 3 centuries. During the height of its boom, Mutapa seemed nearly as invincible as its comic book counterpart. In the end, though, a combination of factors led to its downfall: infighting between provinces, overmining, religious clashes caused by village chiefs converting to Christianity, and forceful takeovers of resources and trading stations by the Portuguese, to name a few. That's very important. Don't forget that. By the mid-1700s, the Mutapa Empire had crumbled amid a civil war.
Which was kind of alluded to in the Black Panther movie. So we see that some of those same themes that you just read about right there were playing itself out in the Black Panther movie.
Yes. So much so.
Almost caused the destruction of Wakanda.
Exactly. And we haven't seen... Okay, I can't say that. Well, we told you there were going to be spoilers. We haven't seen the end of Wakanda.
No.
Okay, so right off the top, that's spoiler number 1. These themes are important throughout the movie because they are important not just in the history of this African kingdom, but they're also important in what is facing Africa today. So much so that Professor Mabaya says that I think the Mutapa kingdom is a great reminder of contemporary opportunities and threats facing Africa. So, yep, we're going to provide you with a link to that article. And now, oops, I keep doing that. I'm so sorry, y'all. So now, we hope we've set up Wakanda a little bit for you. If you're not familiar with the comic, Wakanda is this hidden empire, this hidden a nation in Africa. The very first scenes in the movie, the things that I loved, one of the things that I loved about this movie was the very first scene in the movie made it very clear that Wakanda is in Africa. And they tied Wakanda to Africa. It's not like this imaginary nation.
It's not like Asgard.
Yeah, right. It's not like this nation like off in space somewhere, like the seven worlds in another realm. Right. No, son. It's in Africa.
And it's on the planet Earth.
It's on planet Earth. It's in Africa. And it is a wealthy nation, although to the outside world, it intentionally presents itself as a third world country because Wakanda is hiding something that is extremely important, extremely unique to Wakanda, but is extremely important to the survival of Wakanda and to what makes Black Panther Black Panther. Two things, actually. One is the mineral that is all throughout the mountain range and really the foundation, the earth under Wakanda, and that's vibranium. It's in the comic the strongest mineral in the world, it's the strongest metal in the world. Which is
which when I saw that in the movie, I was thinking about the other so-called strongest metal, which was made the Wolverine.
Oh yeah, adamantium.
Adamantium. This is stronger than that.
See, yeah.
Yep. This is stronger than adamantium.
Yeah, and I'm an X-Men comic fan too. So I've always wanted, this is just my little secret thing. I've always wanted Black Panther. I think, did they? Somebody let me know if Black Panther and Wolverine ever got into a fight. I know somebody's gonna tell me one that let me know, because I always secretly wanted them to. But
right, and you know, I'm one of those ones. Even though I'm a comic book geek in a way, I really wasn't really privy to the Black Panther. I didn't follow him. I was a Hawk man,
and I don't even understand how we got married.
I was a Hawk man, so I mean, the Black Panther is sort of like new to me. I didn't follow, but one of the things I wanted to connect historically too, after you just gave that presentation, is that it's not strange that the whole premise of Wakanda being a hidden kingdom is strange, because historically Africans, nations, and African people have always established what we would call hidden kingdoms. They we look at the Maroons.
Oh,
and we know that the Maroon culture in the Caribbean, the Maroon culture, even in America, blacks have set up hidden kingdoms. Well, not so much kingdoms, but hidden communities to protect themselves from their former slaves, from slave owners and colonizers.
Yeah, and one of those hidden colonies or hidden communities was in very near where I grew up in, and we talked to a lady when we went to Shako Bottom, who is the founder of an organization that is memorializing the history of the Great Dismal Swamp.
Exactly.
So one of those hidden communities where black people took the uninhabitable or impenetrable surroundings that nature provided to protect them from outsiders, to keep them safe. That you're right. That's not an unusual thing. So that was cool. That was a cool thing that, as we're sitting there watching the movie, you're like, oh, yo, we've done that.
Yeah, we've done that.
Yeah, that's not like imaginary. We didn't have like cloaking devices, but yeah, we used the surroundings where we knew white people aren't coming over here.
Yeah, like you look at the Jamaican Maroons that went up into the mountains.
Right.
You look at some of the Maroon communities in Colombia and South America, places like Bolivia, and other places where black people have not only gained their freedom through armed struggle, but was so fierce in their armed struggle and set up these communities that white folks just didn't want to mess with them.
Right.
And don't think that wasn't unique in the United States, because there's always this tendency, this narrative that Africans in the United States didn't fight for their freedom.
Right.
They didn't put up an armed struggle, and somehow, but that's not true. Right. There is evidence of a few maroon communities, as Jackie just mentioned, right in Virginia, in the Great Swamp area, and down in Florida, where African Americans formed communities with the Native Americans in Florida, and fought the longest war that the United States, I believe at that time, fought the longest war, fought a war with the United States Army, which was considered at that time the longest war.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, down in Florida, the Seminole Wars. And
Right.
a lot of that was, the United States Army ran into a major resistance with the maroon community that was allied with the Native Americans in Florida. And so we have this history of not violent, but armed struggle even in this country.
Yeah, and I think the name of that place is Fort Mose. If I'm correct, MOSE. We'll look it up and give you the links so you can do your homework and read that stuff. Okay, so that was one thing we loved about the movie, that the writers seemed to do a good job connecting African cultures, traditions, ancient history on some level of African people into the movie, into the story of Wakanda, and I think that was wonderful. The choreography, the beauty of the land was just stunning.
Yes,
just stunning.
Yes, it was a very beautiful movie.
Yeah, the beauty of the African people, though, everything. I love the way the directors and the choreographers and everybody involved with the movie, everything was centered around tradition. Yes. There was a heavy focus in Wakanda on tradition, because the one thing that made Wakanda unique and why they felt they needed to hide from the outside world was because they had all of this incredibly wealthy, incredibly valuable vibranium.
And not just vibranium, but the technology was more advanced than anything else on the planet. But there was also the heart-shaped plant,
right, that from which an extract was created that gave Black Panther his superhuman powers.
Right.
So in a departure from the other Marvel superheroes, where, Thor is powerful because of his hammer and because he's descendant from Norse gods, right? Where Wolverine is powerful because his bones were fused with adamantium. Where, like, the Fantastic Four were powerful because of some cosmic radiation.
The Hulk gamma rays.
The Hulk gamma rays. Black Panther got his power from the traditions of his people, like literally from the traditions of his people, from the vibranium that grew in the ground and the heart-shaped plant that was a byproduct of the vibranium. And it was the tradition of protecting these two things and weaving these two things into the culture of Wakanda and the traditions is what gave Black Panther his power, which is very different from all the other Marvel superheroes that got their power and their strength from like otherworldly sources. But for Black Panther and Wakanda, the source of the strength and the wealth of Wakanda is in the ground. It is in the ground.
And if you look at that and see that sort of like Black Panther and King T'Challa and the other kings that came before him, well, it's sort of like a parallel to the King Arthur myth of the king when the Holy Grail and the king being connected to the land. And that the king derived his strength and power from the land. I was a big fan and still am of what's the name of that? Excalibur.
Oh yeah, that's one of our favorite movies.
And one of the themes in Excalibur was that the king and the land is one. And so when the knights went on this quest, and look for the Holy Grail. The question was, what is the secret of the Grail? And so one of the knights found, he discovered what the secret was, and he said that the king and the land is one. So you see that kind of parallel here in Black Panther, is that the king is rooted to the land. But I want to get into the fact. I want to start off by dealing with why black people love this movie so much, because all of y'all seen the images. Some of you may have participated in it. Black people dressing up, a lot of them, a lot of us dressing up in African wear. You've seen the pictures all over social media,
right?
And and so you saw this, and a lot of people, a lot of non-black people, didn't understand that. In fact, we did on the last show, we spoke about one conservative commentator who felt that there was something wrong with this type of attention given to the Black Panther movie during Black History Month.
Right.
But we've seen the images of black people dressing up, as I call, like a Kwanzaa-esque.
Kwanzaa-esque kind of celebration.
Yeah, Kwanzaa-esque type celebration. And not that that's a critique. What I'm saying is that surely with that the Black Panther movie had touched us on a particular level.
Yeah, and I have to be honest, because at first I was like, okay, I don't see too much kente cloth and too many dashikis and too many gaylays and too much, too many black people dressing up in African garb any other day of the year, to support Africa in any other way. But then I had to kind of check myself, because like we said at the beginning, at the top of the show, we have to remember, those of us who are quote unquote conscious, and this is something that I have to keep, the words of Kwame Ture I have to keep them like at the front of my brain when I'm being critical of black people who I think are not as conscious as me, right? Those of us who are conscious, our job is not to criticize those who are not conscious. Our job is to help bring them to consciousness. So when we recognize that people aren't quite there on that level of understanding of things in the bigger picture, our job is not to, slam them up against the wall and tell them how deficient they are and that they're part of the problem. But our job is to explain why their view is kind of myopic and narrow.
Right.
So and that is not to like say to people, you suck as a black person.
I mean, we have and then we have to understand that insight, consciousness, as we call it, is a gift. I mean, it's not that people who aren't as politically astute or aren't as what we say conscious are any less intelligent. It's that insight is a gift, and with that gift, you have to be humble. Humility comes with that. Oftentimes, many of us who are given certain gifts of insight or understanding of situations, a lot of times we're not so humble with it, and we usually hurt our own cause because we say, well, damn, why they don't see what I see? Well, that's the point. The point of it is that it's a gift, and as a gift, you share it, and there will be, and hopefully, people will understand what you're trying to point out. Right. And there will always be people like that. There will always be people who are given the gift of insight or understanding of certain things. And it is the responsibility is to share that and not assume that you're any more intelligent than anyone else. No, it's just the fact that you've been given a gift. We have savants. We have people who are gifted on levels that we would never be able to attain. So there has to be humility with that. But what I want to do is I want to go into getting to the meat of this thing. Yeah. Now let's start getting into what I consider. Let's deal first of all with the positives of the Black Panther movie.
Yes. All right. Yes, because there were some.
Right. There were a lot. Yeah. And number one is the way that it portrayed Africa. Man. That is the number one. I think that's the number one positive thing that I got out of the movie is the way that it portrayed not only Africa, but how it portrayed African people. Yes,
and how it portrayed the traditions, the culture, that Africa is not full of a bunch of backward, ignorant savages. You know, Africans are a people with a rich, you know, you and I know this. Again, this conversation has to come with the understanding that a lot of people don't know what we know about Africa, right? Like, we know about the history of the Moors here in this country, and the certain noteworthy or large kingdoms in Africa, because we're curious about these things. We're curious about ourselves and our people, and this connection with this continent that was tried, that people attempted to sever. And we are doing everything we can in this natural life to maintain that connection. But we understand that not everybody is doing that. We understand that people are still perpetrating this image of this backward, savage, dark Africa. And the one scene that I have a real problem with was...
But we want to talk about the positive.
Right. I'm getting to the positive, but the scene that I had a problem with that actually turned into an amazing positive was the scene where the soldiers have the girls.
Oh yeah, right. The women warriors.
Well, the soldiers have the black soldiers, the African soldiers have these girls in a truck. They like kidnap them.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And the first thing, of course, you think is, oh my God, they put Boko Haram in this movie, because that's what they want you to think. And at first, I'm sitting there and I'm like, it started off so well, I can't believe they did that, and I'm ready to check out. But it's completely changed to this whole woman empowering kind of, I am not going to be your captive, I'm gonna kick your ass kind of. And then you see from that scene the emergence in the movie of the fierce female warrior.
Yes.
And that's the other great thing.
Yeah, I mean, the image of, like I said, the African people, but you're right. The way that black women are empowered in this movie. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, I was not only impressed with the way that they done that, but this is one of the things that I think is also positive with the relationships between black men and women in this film. Oftentimes and especially in American society, when we try to empower women, we do it off of making men weak.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's like, okay, in order to empower one group, we have to weaken the other. You know, so you know, our attempts at dismantling patriarchy winds up building up matriarchy. And you know, so what happens is that you still have one group that is still not living up to their full potential.
Right.
You know, because we have to make the other group look strong, so that means we have to diminish one group to make the other group look strong. That was not done in Black Panther. In Black Panther, black men were not any less weaker because black women were empowered. And the mutual respect that was given between both sexes. Because, you know, let's be honest. We have been dealing with in this country for decades now this so-called war between black men and black women. And when I say decades, I mean I was aware of it in the 80s, and we spoke about this on the show before. And I remember seeing you know, on American television how they tried to exploit that.
Right.
You know, the problems that really was caused from outside our community.
Yeah.
But you know, but they were trying to exploit. And when I mean they, I'm talking about media. They were trying to exploit, you know, the trauma in black relationships, which was actually caused by pressures from the outside. And so what happened is, in a misdirected way, a lot of us, in order to try to correct that, we said, oh, well, we just need to empower black women more, or we just need to teach black men not to be what they call hyper masculine or whatever. And so what happens is we're playing, you know, we're playing this game, and yet in the Black Panther you see that black men weren't threatened by black women warriors. They weren't threatened by black women empowerment. Black women weren't threatened by the masculinity of black men who were warriors, who were kings, who, I mean, they did not, it was like a perfect balance. It was a perfect balance of respect. You know, of course the king gets all the respect, but even the king was didn't disrespect or didn't show any kind of disrespect towards any of the black women characters, and even the love interest, which was played by Lupita. I won't even try to pronounce the last
Nyong'o.
name. Right, even Lupita. I mean, even in her empowerment as a woman, the way that she dealt with T'Challa. So so it was no one. It wasn't this type of gender back and forth that we in the West are familiar with,
right? Right, and there
black women in Wakanda didn't need feminism. I'll put it that way.
Thank you. They didn't need white American feminism, and there was really no, some of the derisive language, the derisive talk of that script writers put into scripts now, where women are diminishing either the intelligence or the manhood of men, or where men are putting down the femininity or the strength of women. None of that. There was none of that, to the point where even the king, who was not supportive of King T'Challa, there were 5 tribes in Wakanda. 4 tribes were supportive of the king, and 1 wasn't.
Yeah, one tribe weren't. Yeah,
one tribe wasn't. They didn't live in Wakanda in Wakanda proper. They went up and lived in the mountains, and they were just doing their own thing. And the king of Wakanda didn't go to that community,
province,
province for centuries. They had nothing to do with each other. But at the end of at the crisis point in the movie, when King T'Challa's mother and younger sister, have to seek refuge in that kingdom of the king who actually fought T'Challa for the throne and lost, he took his mother and sister in, even after he and his people saved T'Challa's life. And he had no disrespect. Not only didn't he have any disrespect for T'Challa's mother and his younger sister, even though he did not like T'Challa's younger sister, it wasn't because she was a woman. He didn't like the fact that a child was the head of technology for Wakanda. So there was no animosity between men and women in Wakanda. And the scene that I hope people paid attention to, that I'm so afraid that a lot of people missed, but I hope if you go back to see this movie, and I hope you do, because we're going to, there's a scene in which the General Okoye,
who's played by the woman in the Walking Dead,
black
woman in Walking Dead.
The lady who plays Michonne on The Walking Dead, also a favorite character of all time, ever in life, and she is absolutely gorgeous, stunning, just badass, all kinds of her, and the king of Wakanda's entire first line of defense and protection are all female soldiers. All of them. He's got an entire army of women protecting him. The general of the army is a woman. The king of Wakanda seeks counsel from the female general. But there's this one scene that I think perfectly encapsulates the relationship between black men and black women that, see, we always knew that we really do have, but we spent too much time letting outside forces tell us how we're supposed to interact with our men and with our families. And
that's basically, and we'll get into that, and a lot of that is based upon which Killmonger represents, and we're going to get to the Killmonger character, which represents when you get caught off from your own traditions and you're forced to live other people's traditions.
Right.
It's like putting on a coat that doesn't fit.
Exactly. So Okoye has to notify King T'Challa and the leader of one of the other tribes, who is also a member of the army for Wakanda, that there's an outsider at the gates of Wakanda. And they're both together, T'Challa and the guy who's the leader of the other tribes, because they're both there hanging out, feeding his pet rhinoceros, which plays a great role in the movie The Rhinoceros. And as Okoye is greeting both her general and the guy who is the head of the other tribe, she says to them, "My general And then she looks and says to the guy who's the leader of the other tribe, my lover. And the way she communicates with these two men in the same space, she clearly has a deep respect for her role as the general and the advisor of the king of Wakanda. She takes her job as the general of the Wakandan army seriously. She is dedicated to the throne of Wakanda, and she conveys that respect in the way she talks to T'Challa in that moment, because you can hear the graveness of the threat in her voice. But when she turns to her lover, you can also hear from this same badass warrior woman, you can also hear her deep love, and you can see it in her eyes. That's why this woman is an amazing actress. You can see in her eyes and her face her deep love for this other man as she's delivering this news to both of them, saying, y'all, we need to strap up and go to war.
So basically, I mean, what she displayed in that scene is the fact that even though she's a general, which calls for a certain amount of toughness, she is still a woman.
And for Black women, that's been our life all our lives. This idea that we had to push our femininity aside in order to be the general all the time, that has never really sat well with many of us.
Well, because the thing of it is that over here in the West, the strong Black woman, the strong Black woman comments that you hear, or has been not balanced,
right?
Right. So they say, well, you're a strong Black woman, but somehow that a lot of times denotes masculine qualities.
Exactly.
So she's a strong Black woman, but at the same time, she's a woman. And a woman who loves a man, and so the two goes together. It's not either or.
Right.
It's not being a strong Black woman and I don't need my man.
Right.
As
right.
the type of propaganda and indoctrination that Black people in this country, especially, has gotten from white supremacist society through white feminism.
Right. And there was no need for any of the men to diminish any of the women. You never saw that.
Not at all.
Nobody said to any of the women, you need to be more feminine, or hold your tongue, or don't you speak, or no. It was the only place that was done. The only time in the movie that was done was when M'Baku, who was the king of the tribe of outsiders, told the colonizer that he couldn't speak in his presence. But we're going to get to that in a minute. Okay, what was another positive thing?
All right, the other positive thing that I seen was Wakanda itself. Wakanda was portrayed as a very advanced society, advanced civilization. When they first go into Wakanda, you see the buildings and you see the technology. Actually, Wakanda looked like you probably went to another planet. I mean,
right.
But it was very African in its design. Whoever was the set designer really did their job, because the technology was it manifested itself through African art. So the buildings and all the infrastructure was uniquely African. In order for you to get the feel of that, you have to see the movie, but it was uniquely African. They had, the transportation system was magnetic rail. In fact, when the CIA guy, who's a white guy, when he asked the question, "Are these trains
magnetic levitation?"
Right. The science director, the head of the science department, I would say the Department of Science in Wakanda, who is a Black woman, and T'Challa's sister, she said, "Of course, like
right, like what else?
Yeah, like what would it be?" But that's one thing, and the positive thing that I seen about Wakanda is, and the reason why it resonated with me, is Wakanda represents to me what Africa could have been without European Arab or other invaders coming in and retarding the development of Africa. Had it not been a slave trade, had the Arabs not invaded with their slave trade, because it wasn't just Europeans, had there not been trauma to the African continent, Wakanda could have been Wakanda could exist right in our reality right now if left alone and allowed to develop. And I think that that's what resonated with me, that this could actually been an African state or nation state that could have been, that could have existed had the history that we're so much aware of or accustomed to have not have happened.
Right. And I don't want to ignore the comments over here on YouTube. Lisa commented about the segment we just talked about the women. She said, when you're head of household and a single black mom, you never learn to take off that armor. That's true. But the fact is, you want to. And the portrayal of black women in this movie as being able to have on that armor and still be able to be women. I mean, ain't I a woman? It's like, this is what it was the perfect portrayal of the relationship between, I think, black men and black women, like you said, that could be if there was no interference by outside forces.
Yeah, because we have to understand that single motherhood is not natural in society. The Wakanda black women didn't have the trauma that caused their families to break up. They didn't have the economic desperation that caused a lot of families to break up. They had tradition, which demanded them to act a certain way. That a lot of it was taken away from us. So again, we adapt to our situation.
Right.
We adapt to the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and when those outside forces, negative forces, don't exist, then you have a civilization,
right,
of people being civil. It's only when that trauma comes is that we have those type of negative of things that happen. And it is an important thing that black women and black men were portrayed the way that they were portrayed in the Black Panther movie. I mean, even Killmonger, as much as a force of reckoning force that he was, I mean, I think it was maybe one scene where he might assaulted a woman in Wakanda because she wouldn't do what he ordered her to do because he was the king. And when he's and she wouldn't do it, so he had to he grabbed her and said, I'm your king, you do what I tell you to do. But it wasn't this one, it wasn't this overall assault on black womanhood. I think that in the scene where that they were battling in one of the scenes, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but you've seen that there was no there just wasn't no disrespect on the level of gender that you've seen here. Nobody was made to feel small because there was a woman, and nobody was made to feel small because they were a man.
Exactly. And for black people who have been fed a certain narrative about our people, both on the continent and here, that was important. That was extremely important. It's also important because of what you said, because of what we could be were it not for the interference of outside forces.
Right.
We really do enjoy the commentary on economics from a particular online intellectual. We really do love this person's commentary.
Yvette Carnell.
See,
she's famous. I mean,
I try to be polite, but he's just like,
she's a public figure.
True,
Carnell.
She's a public figure. We really do enjoy and respect Yvette Carnell's economic commentary. It is very, very important.
But before I get into her, I just want to say, because we're talking about all this positive, not all black people like the Black Panther movie, obviously.
Right.
But because we're going into the Yvette Carnell part of this, and she's just one of many who didn't really embrace the movie. Even before the movie came out, you had these so-called black conscious people And please stop listening to them when it comes to movies, because they the ones that told us to stay away from Nat Turner.
Yes.
They the ones that told us to stay away from this black movie, that black. They ain't got a black movie these Negroes like yet.
None.
And they also said, oh, stay away from Black Panther, and they got into this silly debate of whether it's a black movie or not. Just stop listening to them. The fact remains is that yes, it wasn't a total embrace by black people of the Black Panther, even though I think those people are in the minority. Mm-hmm. But as far as Yvette Carnell, as you were saying, she took issue with a couple things in the Black Panther movie, which you and I kind of disagreed with her on. And y'all know we love Yvette Carnell. I mean, we have sung her praises on this on our show. But we don't. Sometimes, man, you have to part ways with people sometimes on certain things.
Yeah, and
that's independent thought.
Exactly, and you're not going to agree with every single thing that comes out of people's mouths. Please don't think that Jacqueline and Abdul-Shahid agree on every single thing that each other says all the time. We don't. Sometimes Brewski is the tiebreaker, but usually, we don't agree all of the time. Mm-mm. So one of the issues that Yvette Carnell has, and other people who have this issue with the movie, and we have some issues with the movie too, and we're getting there. But one of the issues she has is the whole uplifting of African culture, and with the African garb and celebrating Africa that Black Americans are doing, because she feels like we don't have the connection with Africa, or at least they don't have the connection with us that we keep celebrating, because it is true that some African kings sold other Africans into slavery.
Yeah, it's common critique.
It's a common critique, but I think we need to be really, really careful with how far we take that critique in using it to dismiss our connection with Africa completely, and to dismiss why we should express that connection and strengthen it. Because, first of all, not every king of every African kingdom sold other Africans into slavery, right? That's just not even true. It wasn't even most kings. It was an extremely small percentage of kings. It was actually like less than, I think, 5 or 6 specific tribes that were largely responsible for participating in the slave trade. This is out of probably thousands, maybe tens of thousands of independent tribes on the continent of Africa. So just on that basis, I am not comfortable with condemning an entire continent of people for the actions of like 6 kings in participating in the transatlantic slave trade. Then the question becomes raised about why would we celebrate African culture where were Africans when we were being sold into the in the transatlantic slave trade? Well, let me tell you where Africa was. Africa was being colonized by Britain, by Germany, by Belgium, by France, by the Arabs, by Portugal, by Spain. That's where Africa was. And now,
the Dutch.
And the Dutch. Thank you. I keep forgetting the Dutch. I don't know why, when they were one of the most prolific traders in the slave trade. And we're not talking about just like a few small kingdoms being affected by the colonization of Africa. We're talking about the entire continent being carved up into the nation states that we know today by outside forces. So it is strange to us that we would completely dismiss the culture and the embracing of the culture of the continent that our ancestors came from because of the actions of an extremely small minority of people who participated in that expulsion of our ancestors from our homeland, and knowing that while we were suffering under the terrors of the transatlantic slave trade, everybody in Africa was suffering under colonization. So they literally had no way to come to our aid, and that was by design. Mm-hmm. So this was not like something where a lot of Africans were sitting back and going, oh, they're having a really rough time over there, too bad. That's just not how it was. So I really have an issue with not embracing, with criticizing people who would embrace and uplift this positive representation of Africans and Africa. Really got a problem with that, because not just because we're Pan-Africanists, because we believe in the unification and the independence of Africa from all outside influences, and that includes the unification of Africans in the diaspora, us, brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, wherever we are, where our ancestors were dropped off because of the slave trade. We believe in the unification of all of us.
And that was a major theme in Black Panther.
Yes.
That really Killmonger, well, not even Killmonger. One of the major themes in the Black Panther is the fact that Wakanda wasn't about that.
Right.
The fact that Wakanda, with all of its prosperity, all of its technology, all of its wealth, the fact that they were isolationists and isolationists, and it was a few times in the movie, in fact, very early on in the movie, where we seen this schism amongst the Wakandans themselves, because the Wakandans had sent out spies, as nations do, and they sent out spies, I guess, to keep check on what's going on outside of their kingdom. And so one of the Wakandans seen the plight of Black people, and he was in America, and he seen the plight of Black people in America, and he took the vibranium and wanted to give it and use that technology to have Black Americans, because he was in America, to have Black America fight or fight against the oppression. And of course, that was a major crime in Wakanda. And so when the king, not T'Challa but his father, confronted this brother, I can't remember his name. I think it was Njomo or something. But when he confronted him, and he's the king's brother, and he said, you committed a major crime. And he said, yeah, but the Black people in this country, and he named all of the problems that Black people were facing. And he said, they don't have the weapons. They don't have what they need to fight. And so, yes, I'm going to give this to them so that, that they can fight. And so you already seen early on in the movie that this was a major schism in Wakandan thought. Yes. That those who were outside of Wakanda and who were spies and who were sent to different places, they started to see that all the Black people ain't living like we live in Wakanda,
right? And
we got and we have the ability to change this. And so it reminds me. Well, maybe I'm not going to use that analogy. It might not fit here, but so again, and this was something. Killmonger was this person's child,
right?
And so the king killed Njomo, I think his name was, but he killed him because Njomo pulled a gun out on him, because he was determined to do what he had to do, and the king killed him, but he left Eric Killmonger an orphan, right? And so Eric Killmonger, being part of royal blood, and he grows up, and this is amazing thing that that Jackie and I discussed earlier too, that when Killmonger, who is trained as a killer by the U.S. military, he was trained as a killer by the U.S. military. He was part of first of all, he went to MIT. He was able to he was able to succeed despite losing his father, who instilled in him a lot of Wakandan values and traditions in himself before he was murdered. And he had a close relationship with his son. Another point that the Black Panther movie dispelled is Black men not being good fathers. Yes. Yes. Right? So you have Black men not being good fathers. The Black Panther dispelled that with this relationship. Right. Killmonger loved his father, and that was why he went on this rampage, because he lost his father. One of the reasons that was his father. And the United States military trained him to be a killer. Now, this is important. John Henry Clark said that one of the biggest fears of the West is for Black American servicemen are the only black people on the planet that can go to Africa and create strong African militaries, because those black servicemen are trained by the greatest military on the planet.
Yeah.
So black pilots, black Marines, black Navy SEALs, all of this stuff. Black Army Rangers. If black military personnel was to ever go to Africa, and now mind you now, not to train forces to be used as proxies for the United States, but to be used to train for African army. Dr. John Henry Clark said that is one of the biggest fears that the United States and the West could have, and not just a black American servicemen, but British black servicemen too. Yep. But we're going to stick with the United States. So Killmonger represented the lethality of the United States military within his very being.
Yes, and so, I'm sorry.
No. So when he eventually went to Wakanda to confront T'Challa, there was a couple of things that that was highlighted. The fact that Killmonger represented African Americans who felt abandoned. Because that was one of the things. It was a major scene in the Black Panther when he confronted T'Challa, and he looked at how the Wakandans were living. Right. And what he said was, "Well, you guys are good." He said, "But there's 2 billion people that look just like us that ain't living like this."
That's right.
And where were you guys at? And you felt the hurt and pain in him that many of us felt, especially in the climate of this so-called a lot of us ran into this anti-African American sentiment that is often given to us by people who look just like us, who come from Africa and the Caribbean, stuff like that. So he embodied that rage and anger, because it was like, I'm orphan. African Americans, orphan. It's like we don't have a home. And so the anger is, man, y'all got this, and I don't have no part of this. Right. You know what I mean? Right. So James Baldwin said, I believe it was James Baldwin that said, but he used it in the relation of the American dream, and said that those who are denied it will eventually destroy it.
Look, man, and see, this is why you over there. Ooh,
I try.
this, and see, he says. This is why when you have this kind of knowledge and understanding, you have to be kind of humble, because it does kind of tick you off when people don't get this. But you have to.
Right now, and just to interject. Right now, we got 9 people on Facebook watching us. Right. Now, and the thing of it is, that's okay. Or 10 now. But the thing of it is that we understand. Jackie was talking about some other person who does progressive streams like we do. She had like 525 people
ranting about psychotic conspiracy theory BS.
See, and the thing of it is that those 500, and you said this, that those 525 people are watching her can't do jack shit with the information she gave them. And they ain't going to do jack shit with the information she gave them. They just sitting there to be lied to and to be entertained. But the thing of it is that with y'all 10 people on Facebook, and I don't know who's over there.
It's 10 people over there on YouTube.
But with you guys who's listening, it's not always, as the old saying is, it's quality, not quantity. Yeah. And that's what we try to give you quality. But go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, and just for full disclosure for y'all, I was really in my feelings about that. How some people have been, just honestly, all they have talked about since the primaries has been the DNC, Hillary Clinton, WikiLeaks, the certain hashtags they'll talk about. And I swear to every time they are on, they have hundreds of followers. And here we are doing research, reading books, hooking up with people who are way smarter than us, like a Jamu Baraka and Dr. Jared Ball. And we're hoping to have, what's his name? Maurice. I can't remember his last name, but brother who is a representative, Friends of the Congo, who is going to talk to us about the ongoing struggle in the country. We're bringing you information about people who are in the struggle today, and my feelings were hurt. I'm not even gonna lie. My feelings were hurt because sometimes we can only get like 20 people to watch our live streams.
But but it's funny, just to use a religious analogy, Jesus Christ said a prophet is rarely welcomed in his own nation.
Yeah. So to bring that idea home, I was really like bereft.
Thank you,
I really
Bob.
was.
Maurice Carney, right?
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Is that Bob?
Bob, that's
That's Bob. What's up, Bob? And I mean, so I was really, and then I'm just being real honest with y'all, because you know how long we've been doing this online thing. We've been doing it since 2000. When did we get married? 13. We've been doing it since 2014 in one way. Then we started doing the live streams and that kind of thing. So we've been at this for a long time, and we've been sharing this information. And it's like, I guess we would be more popular if I started talking about false flags and conspiracy theories and the deep web every damn week too.
MMT.
Oh, and MMT. But instead, we're trying to get people to understand what the struggle is. And I was so bereft. But Mr. Humble here helped me understand with a couple of the things that he just said. And he said something else, which is why I think this particular show, and what we're about to talk about, these things that we didn't like about Black Panther, the movie, are so incredibly important. Mm-hmm. So you said to me, as I was sitting on the side of the bed, all pissed off and not wanting to log on the computer because this chick, this crazy, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to disparage people with mental issues, but she calls herself sane, and she's not. This person had 500 something viewers, and she is talking about absolutely nothing worthwhile talking about in the world. And you know, I'm just like, dang, we can't even get 20 people, and we actually prepare and talk about stuff and connect things to stuff that makes sense.
But this is the
in
thing.
History,
right?
And you said maybe, honey, it is that we are like conduits to people who would otherwise be intimidated by Black intelligentsia. Mm-hmm. And I'm, all huffy. What do you mean? Wait a minute, that kind of makes sense. I kind of like that. Say it again. And he said, no, really, for real. Maybe we are like Black intelligentsia for lay people. I don't know. So the people who watch us value what we say. They take what we say, and they do more research, and they learn some stuff. And if that is the return on the investment that we make, that 7 people over here and 10 people over here take this information and run with it and learn some stuff, then that grows. Yeah, those people can't do squat.
And the thing of it is that ratings don't mean that it's better. Right. CNN, I'm sure, gets more ratings than well, I don't know if McNeil Larry Report is still on anymore, but I'm sure CNN gets a lot better ratings than any PBS show. News show that comes on PBS.
Or Democracy Now.
That's a better example. Mm-hmm. CNN gets more ratings than Democracy Now. But who has the better content?
Right.
Democracy Now. So it's not all about numbers a lot of times, as it's about content.
Right.
So
that was our commercial break.
Right. But so anyway, Killmonger. Mm-hmm. That I felt that Killmonger, even though I can't even call him a villain, right. and that's the thing. I think that when you're on the other side of the fence, when you're on the other side of the fence as he was, mm-hmm. You understand that rage, mm-hmm. that rage of being fatherless, that rage of being abandoned, that rage of no one coming to your aid, that rage of having to always struggle. That rage of seeing Killmonger and Killmonger's beef and his rage wasn't always personal.
Right.
Killmonger was going to be determined. He wanted a world revolution against what he considered the oppressor.
Right. Right.
He wanted a world revolution. He felt that his arsenal was in Wakanda.
Exactly. So here's where we depart from all the things we love about Black Panther to some of the serious socio-political, some of the serious problems with the socio-political messaging that's in the movie. Because here's something we need to keep in mind about all entertainment. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's movies, music, books, cartoons. I don't care what it is. All entertainment is either one of two things, and sometimes it can be both. All entertainment is either propaganda or it is someone's vision of their interpretation of what a culture is. And in this case, for good and for bad, I think Black Panther is both of those things. Because while the imagery is important, because we talk all the time about how Black people need to stop relying so much on symbolism, and we need to get beyond being so happy about symbolism and get to the meat of things. Absolutely true. But we understand that symbolism really is important. So it is important to have those positive symbols, that positive imagery of Wakanda and Africa as rich and powerful, because really, honestly, Africa is rich and powerful. If it weren't, so many people would not be trying to keep it destabilized and to keep African nations unable to govern and defend themselves from outside forces. Okay, so the issue of Killmonger being painted not just as a villain in the movie, but being dismissed, his gripes being dismissed as like simple daddy issues.
Oh, by some people, right?
Look, Killmongers, and I'm not going to not call him Killmonger because I like the name. I know some people are like, don't call him Killmonger.
Well, that's the character.
No, that's the character's name in the comic. Yeah. That's his name. His name is Killmonger. We're probably more team Killmonger than we are team T'Challa. That's just me, how I feel right now. But Killmonger's beef was much, much bigger than just daddy issues. Yeah. His beef was that he was cut off from his people. And he was done so for a reason that nobody explained to him, that nobody bothered to try to explain to him. And the people who he was connected to, who had the ability to help his adoptive family, because African people outside of Wakanda were basically his adoptive family. The people who were his natural family had all the resources to help his 2 billion member adopted family who were being abused and refused to do it. One of the first scenes in the movie, where they're setting up the story of Wakanda, what Wakanda is, they're explaining what Wakanda is and the vibranium, and it's being told in a story. And there's a line in that scene where the narrator says, Wakanda cut itself off from the rest of the world, while the world outside of it are roiled in chaos or something like that. Yep, and you see images of Africans chained at the neck being led to slave ships. And you see other images of World War I and II and protest and Black people being abused. So for people to think that Killmonger's beef was just about some daddy issues, they don't understand the larger political issues that were being presented here.
And it was also a legitimate rage on Killmonger's part about the isolationism of Wakanda. Because one of the scenes in the movie was when the white CIA director came into the science office. Ooh. And she said to him, "How you doing, colonizer?"
Yeah, oh, that was hilarious.
You know what I mean? So, and not only that, but they had spies in other countries. The fact that they were explaining that we got to help the Black people who are being oppressed. Wakanda knew what was happening.
Right.
So it wasn't like they were ignorant of this kind of stuff. They understood European colonization. They understood the effects that European colonization had took on Africa. They understood all of that. But they were so... it's like America during World War II when they seen Hitler rampaging through Europe,
right?
And they had this isolation. Well, that's a European war. We don't want to get involved with it. But eventually, they had to get involved. You know what I mean? So they just couldn't let Hitler win. So so they the world under Hitler rule would be something that the world could not tolerate. So they had to get involved. The United States did. But and it's the same thing with Wakanda. the fact that Wakanda knew what was happening, but their isolationist viewpoint kept them from helping in a lot of these areas. So so Killmonger had really a legitimate beef to say that, man, you guys had this, and it goes with the old saying, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
Well, they had the great power. They just didn't see that it was their responsibility to do anything except just keep themselves safe from outsiders. But the one thing, another negative that bothered me is the CIA guy. Because the CIA guy was allowed to come into Wakanda. Now, Wakanda knowing what's going on. And you could use this analogy again with American isolationism during World War II. Because Roosevelt had a hard time convincing the American people that we should get involved in stopping Hitler's rampage in Europe. He had to really make a lot of political maneuverings just to even get military support to England. I bring that up to say that one of the things that isolationism had cost the United States during World War II was it created a weak military.
Oh.
So Roosevelt really couldn't commit American forces at that time because the American military was weak after 20 years of isolationism. America was ranked like 27 in the world militarily.
Really?
Right. It was like down that far when it came to militaries during right on the eve of World War II for America. So America had to have a major military building program in order to even compete against, especially Nazi Germany at that time. But my point being that Wakanda was also weakened by its isolationism because they were weakened to the point that it wasn't wise to let the CIA guy in Wakanda to see what was going on. What I'm saying is it wasn't very good military strategy.
It was terrible military strategy.
And what happens is that when you're isolationist and all you focus on is keeping yourself safe and keeping this, then what happens is that you lose your global wits about you on who's your real enemy.
That's a really great point, especially considering for those of you guys who have just joined, if you didn't notice the title, yes, there are spoilers. We are talking about Black Panther, the movie. We are talking about specific scenes in the movie where there are spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, you don't want to hear the spoilers, get off.
Yeah, I mean, you can come back later.
Because you can come back later, but we're talking about scenes in the movie. So it was really unwise for... Now here's T'Challa, this wise king. Right? Wise, badass Black Panther king. He's got his badass general with him. There's a scene where they go into this what do you call it? This speakeasy, this illegal gambling spot.
But before you go on there, just to illustrate the point, T'Challa, remember in Captain America: Civil War, his father was part of the UN.
Right.
So it wasn't like he didn't know how shady some of these world powers could be when it comes to their own self-interest. I just wanted to just put that in there.
Thank you for reminding me of the UN connection, because we got to talk about this scene at the end of this movie that just... Okay, so they go to this illegal gambling spot and they're looking for Claw. Right. And they're looking for Claw. You're gonna have to read the comic. We can't tell you every single thing. So they're looking for Claw. Claw has stolen an artifact that is made of vibranium. Claw is taking the artifact and is selling it to someone at this gambling den. This illegal gambling den.
And he also weaponized vibranium for himself.
Right. He also has this fake arm that is made into this like weapon, and it's made out of vibranium. Again, vibranium is only one place in the world, in Wakanda. When they're casing the place, T'Challa, Okoye, and the other lady's name, his love interest, I'm getting all the names jumbled up in my head, they spot all the people who are spies and all the people who are armed, and then they spot the CIA agent. They know who he is because of his dealings with his father from the last, right? So T'Challa knows that there's something not right, this CIA agent complicates this plan. But he doesn't know at the time that the CIA agent is there to buy the weapon from Claw with a case full of diamonds that of course came from the CIA.
And came from Africa.
And came from, I didn't even think of that. I don't even know why I didn't think of that. But come on. So, the CIA, remember who the CIA is. This is the part of this movie that's all propaganda. All of it. Everything we talk about from here on in is all propaganda. Remember what the CIA is and always has been to leftist organizations around the world, especially to black leftists around the world that didn't want to have anything to do with Western imperialism and colonialism and neo-colonialism. Remember that. And if you don't know, we're going to help you understand that. Not only the CIA, but the FBI too. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about a CIA agent who is there with a case full of diamonds from Africa, more than likely, right, to buy a weapon that was stolen that is made of a mineral that can only be found in an African kingdom that's supposed to be third world. Mm-hmm. And this transaction is being handled by a CIA agent. But somehow after this shootout that happens in this club, after this deal going wrong, for some reason, they take the CIA agent back to Wakanda.
Right, right.
In the real world, the CIA agent, if in any general worth her job of a true king of Africa, the CIA agent would have been killed.
He would have been a star on the wall.
He would have been a star on the wall, and they were like, "We'll get Claw next week."
Right.
But that dude right there, he's got our diamonds, and he's here. No, he can't come back. But in the movie, the benevolent Africans, right, ignoring the history of imperialism, regime change, fomenting military coups against African leaders, Patrice Lumumba, mm-hmm, Thomas Sankara. What are some other names? And Patrice Lumumba is especially important.
You got Kwame Nkrumah.
Kwame Nkrumah. These are all people who were African leaders who were focused on using the resources and the strengths of Africa for African people and not relying on any assistance whatsoever from Western powers.
Yeah, the last victim of that was Muammar
Gaddafi. All of these leaders, as soon as they declared Africa for Africans, and we will use our wealth for African people, and we don't want Western powers in our countries, and we don't want help from you, they were all assassinated by the CIA. So the fact that this movie has this scene in which this great African king is taking this dude back to Wakanda, supposedly to, I guess, get information from him or whatever. If you don't know the history of the CIA involvement in regime change and imperialism in Africa, of course it's not going to bother you. And the joke that his sister makes when they bring him in, because T'Challa's reasoning was, I can't let him die if I can save him. Because the agent was shot in the back.
Right.
Right? And Okoye was actually like, he ain't our friend.
Well, that was another major point in the movie that I think that Hollywood sticks to. Mm-hmm. Hollywood sticks to the benevolent blacks helping whites.
Yes.
And I mean, how can I put it? It's not that I'm against that. So I don't want anybody to think that.
Because somebody's feelings go
No, but James Baldwin made the point in the documentary that was just out not too long ago.
I'm Not Your Negro.
I'm Not Your Negro. One of the things that James Baldwin said when he was critiquing the movie with Sidney Poitier and I think Steve McQueen when they was, I can't remember the name of the movie, but they were both escaped convicts.
Oh, and they were chained together.
They were chained together, and one scene where I think something happened to Steve McQueen, and Sidney Poitier could have just left him and went for his own freedom. But he comes back to help Steve McQueen. And James Baldwin made an interesting comment. He said, you know, Hollywood has to put the narrative in there that black people will always sacrifice themselves for whites because it assures whites that we don't hate them. Now, that's important because that has been a consistent theme. Maybe except for the Django, but it has been Unchained. But that has been a consistent theme in a lot of movies where there's blacks and whites, and the blacks have the they have the what I'm saying, when they have the advantage of looking out for themselves. It's like, well, I can't look out for myself. I have to save this person.
I have to save the white man.
Right. Or, you know, I have to save this person. I have to sacrifice myself. You know, I call it the Lethal Weapon thing. You know, I have to save my white partner. And yes, that's humane. That's civilized. But at the same time, when you're dealing with reality, with the CIA guy, okay, I can save another white guy, but I don't want to save the white guy who could possibly undermine my kingdom.
Right.
You know, that white guy, you know, I may let him die. Or maybe I'll call 911 or something and let somebody else pick him up.
While I'm rolling out.
But the thing of it is that that's one of the themes in the movie that I think that Hollywood remains consistent, and it's understandable from Hollywood's point of view. From Hollywood's point of view, because even during the the UN speech, you know, it was still this kumbaya. I'm going to take the resources of Wakanda and I'm going to heal everybody's world, or I'm going to, you know, you know, it was like, you know, we're going to make sure that everybody's okay. And coming from and being a black American, that is reason why black people in this country have not really fared well politically in this country, because we have not set forth a black Pacific agenda for politicians. Not that you know, we shouldn't work with anybody else, but there's still, I can't put my interests above everybody else, even though we're the most oppressed group in this country. So that was something that we political black people really didn't want to see. I would rather, as Dr. Jared Ball said, I would rather for T'Challa to have given that speech to the African Union and say, heal Africa first. Nobody has a problem when people say, well, let's make America great again, or let's do America first. But somehow black people, and specifically Africans, can't say that. Exactly.
I mean, and there's a whole sub-conversation about, you know, that we were having about, because we've actually been talking about this all day. There's this whole sub-conversation about the dynamic between you know, Africans and black people in America can never say these policies need to be directed for and to the uplift of black people, the most oppressed people on the planet, the most oppressed people in this country. But everybody else who says this is our issue that needs to be addressed first, expect black people to come along and say, yeah, let's take care of their issues first. And too many of us do that, thinking that these people are going to turn around and support us, and they never ever do.
Right, and this is the reason why that black people have went from, as Dr. Claude Anderson said, from being second-class citizens to dropping down to third and fourth, because a lot of the immigrant groups that came here and got on board off of the struggles of black people in this country. So you got immigrant groups who came within the last, I say, 50 years, and after civil rights legislation, and they gained huge advantages off of what black people in this country have fought for. But yet they moved in, and because the American system isn't as hostile towards them as it is towards us, they've been able to make economic gains, which has pushed us, even though we're native born here, has pushed us further down the economic and social caste system. And, you know, and everybody's looking at us and say, well, what's wrong with y'all? Well, what's wrong with us is that we have an American system that remains hostile towards black people in this country,
Right.
more hostile than it is to anybody else.
And I really want to make it clear that in saying that, we recognize that's what happens, but that is what the system does. That is how the system differentiates between immigrants and black people who are the descendants of slaves in this country. That's not immigrants' fault.
No.
That is where we depart. I mean, a hard departure from people who blame immigrants for the economic and political and social situation that black people continue to find ourselves in. That is the way the system operates. It is our job as black people to make sure that we advocate for ourselves and that we're not doing the same thing to other groups of oppressed people that the system is doing to them and us. So we don't buy that, this is the immigrants' fault. No, it's the system. And that's where we need to direct our anger and the demand for redress to.
No. It's funny because I'm thinking about when we talked about Eric Killmonger being raised in the United States, and one of the things that we spoke about was here you had the most powerful African kingdom on the planet, and then you have Killmonger who was born and raised and trained by the most powerful country outside of Wakanda, and so you got these two clashes. You got traditional African, you got African, traditional African culture and civilization clashing against what I call the American black, which was represented in Eric Killmonger, and you've seen that clash in the way that even language, even in the language that was being used between the two. For example, when they met up on the battlefield again, and here T'Challa, communicating in a way that he's been raised with respect and tradition and stuff, and he calls him by his full name, not the Eric Killmonger. He calls him by the name of his father,
son of, which is a traditional way
which is a traditional African name. Killmonger says, "What's up?" You know what I mean? Now, people look at that and say, "Oh, that's so ghetto." No, what it is, if you really look at it deeply, is that you're looking at a person, us, that has been cut off from that tradition.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So so we've been cut off from that culture. So that culture, we could have the blood flowing through our veins from that culture, but we don't have the inward knowledge of that culture and traditions that would make us whole and complete. Eric Killmonger was representing those black people like us who remain incomplete. One of the things that Eric Killmonger said that I thought was very, very, very fascinating is he always made references to those Africans who were enslaved. And he embraced them.
Yes.
He embraced them. Unlike so many of us who can't stand to see Roots, who can't stand to see Nat Turner, because we don't want to be reminded. We don't want to be reminded of our slave history. But Eric Killmonger, unlike us, he embraced it. And on some sub level, he was getting revenge for them.
Yes, but was it really revenge? This is one of the very interesting discussions about the Killmonger character. Was he just, this angry black guy from the hood, which is what people would like for you to believe? No. He was actually, out for revenge for his daddy issues. No, he actually wasn't. He was a product of the society, of the corrupt and violent society that he was forced to be raised in. And he, instead of having the cultures and the traditions from this traditional rich African Wakandan society that had issues, but he had instead the values of the society that he was raised in, which was crassness, which was in your face, which was violence. But was it what he was seeking revenge on a personal level for the death of his father, for the unjust death of his father, and for his people leaving him abandoned on this on this continent on a personal level. Yes, it was revenge, but that was revenge was justified. I think that revenge was justified, but on a larger socio-economic or political socio level, what he was looking for the 2 billion people around the planet who look like T'Challa but who don't live like them, he was seeking justice.
Right, exactly.
He wanted the vibranium to be used to arm all of the oppressed people around the world to rise up against their oppressors, to overthrow their oppressors.
And, right, and if you think that this isn't connected to our reality, there has been videos made by Africans. One that I posted on my page that didn't get any response, but one of the things was from an African young man in Senegal who made an appeal to African Americans. And he said in that video, many of you might have seen it, he said, "You are the strongest blacks that we have on this planet. You guys who live in America." And he said one thing is because, and he gave these reasons why he felt that way. And he said, "You guys need to help us. You need to help us." And we've gotten the same response from black people in Brazil who said, "Why are you African Americans? You should come help us." You know, so there is part of the African diaspora family who recognize that, who recognize the potential power of African Americans in this country. What happens is we don't see it.
Right.
But there's part of the African diaspora family who sees that. And they're waiting for us to get our shit together so that we, maybe not in the way that Eric Killmonger wants to, but that we can affect some change here. Because remember, America, being the nation that it is and having the influence that it has, the Brazilian blacks can't influence the American government. Right. African blacks can't influence the American government, but we can. And you know, so this is what they're looking at. It's not so much of an armed struggle, but they're saying, man, you guys in America, y'all got to get y'all shit together so y'all can help us. You know, so don't think that the Eric Killmonger is just some made up character. Right. He embodies the aspirations of a lot of people, and not only on the continent but in the diaspora. And
that is why the portrayal of Eric Killmonger as the kind of deflections that were thrown into the character, where some people actually bought into the daddy issues narrative, right? And made that, you know, he's just an angry young man. But that is why the demise of Eric Killmonger is such a problem.
It is such a problem. Explain that.
Okay. I'm going to try not to yell and scream, because y'all know when I get emotional about something, and I was emotional about this, and I'm still emotional about this, because as a Pan-Africanist, especially a Pan-Africanist in this so-called progressive space that we've got now in this country, being a Pan-Africanist among these people who don't want to talk about black folks and black issues is enraging. It's just, and I know it's not any more difficult than it has been for our parents and their parents. It was much more difficult physically for people who came before us, but I guess this is our time to feel the heat, and I'm feeling it, and I really want to punch people in the face right now, because Eric Killmonger's character represents the very valid grievance that black people in this country and in the diaspora have against colonization, colonizers, neo-colonization, and imperialism that is championed and pushed by the West and the East now. Not only the racism in this country, and the white supremacy in this country, but the colonization and imperialism in the world that is also being done on the continent by China.
Oh, and let's not mention he also embodies the rage of the classism that is perpetrated in the amongst black people themselves, of the upper middle class blacks and those on what we always affectionately call the masses.
Now, the fact that Killmonger was presented with all of that representation of an entire disenfranchised people that we are, that black people outside of the continent are. All of that legitimate rage, he was reduced to a crazy kid from the Oakland, California thug who just wanted to kill a bunch of white people. That's how they presented the radical, Pan-Africanist, righteous, revolutionary ideals of enfranchising the oppressed around the world with the tools to defend themselves against the oppressor. That's how black revolution and black revolutionary thought and action was presented in this movie. Like it's just the rantings and ravings of a bunch of crazy, angry, violent Negroes from the hood.
Right. And you know, it's funny.
Who in the end, because their ideas of empowering the oppressed to rise up against their oppressors is so dangerous, they have to die. That's the one of the major problems with this movie, and it is the major theme. It's the major piece of propaganda that is in this movie. That as fabulous as it is as a Marvel comic, in my opinion, of all the Marvel comic movies, it's the best one, hands down. Well,
yeah, and it represents that, you know, it represents what kind of black man are we comfortable with?
Right.
And see, and that's the thing. You know, are we you know, what kind of black man are we comfortable with? And Killmonger's character, the extreme. I guess some people would consider him hyper masculine or whatever, or toxic masculinity, all these terms we're using. But he was definitely a champion of his people in the more extreme way that maybe T'Challa wasn't. He was more myopic in his view of struggle.
Right.
Where T'Challa had more of a global view of the world, as far as, like we said, with the let's help everybody.
Right.
But Killmonger was like, no, this is about my people. And and it's interesting, and I gotta hurry this up because we only got a few minutes left. But one of the things that I loved about Killmonger's character was towards the end, and when he got the fatal wound after his fight with T'Challa, and T'Challa, didn't offer it to him right away. That was the amazing thing. He didn't offer to save his life right away because he had some fear of. I'm sure in T'Challa's mind he was like, if I heal this person, here's a guy who damn near took my kingdom away from me. If I heal this guy, is he going to continue to be a threat that I have to deal with? So I'm sure that went through his mind, and I'm sure for a brief moment he said I should just let him die. But he asked him after a while of probably contemplating all this stuff in his head. Then he said to Killmonger, he said, we could save you. We can heal you. But I like what Eric Killmonger said. He looked up and he said, no. He said, bury me, because he knew he was dying. He said, bury me in the ocean with my ancestors who jumped off the ship. Because they knew, well, prior to that, I'm getting ahead of myself. He said to the king, he said, why should I let you save me? Why? So you can chain me up forever? Because he understood that they killed his father for wanting to help black people, for exposing to the world this vibranium, and to weaponize it to help black people in the diaspora and on the continent. So he got killed. His father got killed for that. So he understood, like, I took it a step further. I damn near burnt Wakanda down. There is no way y'all let me hang around. Y'all either going to kill me or you're going to chain me up forever so I can no longer be a threat to y'all. He understood that. And he said to him, he said, no, I don't want you to heal me. He said, bury me in the ocean with my ancestors who jumped off the ship because they knew that death was better than bondage.
Yep.
Unlike a lot of us cowardly black folks in this country who want to dismiss the value of our slave ancestors, who want to wipe them out and act like we're ashamed of them, Eric Killmonger, he honored them
throughout the entire
movie. So he honored them. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He wasn't shamed about the slave past of his ancestors, because he understood that they didn't make themselves slaves.
Come on now.
They were the victims of war. He understood that. So how could you be ashamed of the victims of warfare or the casualties of war? But he also understood that in spite of that, he's here.
Yep.
So that means that they struggled enough so that he got here. And he honored them. So those of us who think that we want to just wipe away or ignore our our slave past, he embraced it because he understood that he embodied their struggles and their aspirations and their suffering and their pain.
Exactly. And I have to go back to what you said about the class issues. The class, and that was the other thing that bugged me about.
See, and this is the thing. See, Lee, you knew what the movie, you know what the stream was about. It's more than a comic book and a movie for us. So, if you don't dig it, kick rocks.
Yeah, pretty much. And I do want to say to Lisa Webb, who had to say goodnight, that she gave us the name of the movie with Sidney Poitier and what's his face, and the movie was The Fugitives. So thanks, Lisa.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
So
we're serious, Lee. We're serious.
Yeah. So I gotta get back to what you said about class issues.
All right, we got 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm gonna try. I knew we weren't gonna get to everything in this stream. I knew we weren't. So we're probably gonna have to do a part 2. That's right.
Thanks, Regina. It is a troll alert. They always pop their heads out.
Always. I guess that means we're getting somewhere in life. So we're probably gonna have a part 2 because there's more stuff to talk about this movie, and we are gonna see it again because I know there's stuff we missed. But I really want to get to the class thing because one of the reasons so many black people have a problem with honoring our history of enslavement and embracing that as a part of our proud struggle as a people. I mean, we struggled through no fault of our own. Like you said, we're casualties of war, and we're still here. And we're all over the world. That says something. We ought to be proud of that. We ought to be proud, not necessarily that we were enslaved, but we ought to be proud that everything that was done to us to wipe us out, they couldn't. We're that resilient. That's what Eric Killmonger embodied, the resilience of a people that have been under the pressure of an ongoing campaign of genocide and oppression, and somehow they can't wipe us out. So now we're at a point where, Eric Killmonger's character was at a point where he sees that in his lineage, this lineage of kings, this royal lineage of people who have these resources that can help 2 billion oppressed people who are also casualties of war, the results of the casualties of war. And because Wakanda has held itself up as this shining beacon of whatever, that they have kept the rest of the suffering of black people around it at arm's length. And you can see that Wakanda is wealthy. There is a royal hierarchy there. There's a queen mother who is the widow of the past king. There's the king and all. So there is a royal aspect to rulership. And the people of Wakanda are very well off. You can see their central city is very cosmopolitan. Even though the front they put on for the rest of the world, like the UN, they present themselves as a third world country. That's really just a front. Wakanda is really a bunch of rich, middle, and upper class black people who don't want to get involved in the struggles of the black masses. And that's what the tension, that's also what the tension between Killmonger and T'Challa represents. And we know that also well. When we look at the liberation struggle of black people in this country, that was one of Paul Robeson's greatest troubles, that he realized that the black upper classes were not involved in the struggle with the black masses.
A minute.
Oh, he just said I had a minute. So that is a theme that when you look at the history of black struggle in this country, if you just want to isolate it to this country, that's a very common theme.
Right.
Where you had the two warring ideologies of assimilation and separation, and the middle and upper class blacks almost always wanted assimilation, and the black masses were always like, well, we're already separated, I don't see why why can't we just be liberated? I don't understand. That's always been that tension among black people in the liberation struggle, and that is a part of that narrative that is very clear. And the reason so many black people love Wakanda so much is because it relates us to our lineage to kings and queens. I got news for y'all. All of us are not descendants from kings and queens. We can't possibly all be descendants of kings and queens. Some of us were descendants of sheep herders. Some of us were descendants of farmers. Some of us were the descendants of warriors. Some of us were the descendants of midwives, but all of us were not the descendants of kings and queens. And so it's that class aspect that is one of the reasons a lot of American blacks don't like to include the narrative of enslavement in our recognizing our history, because we don't want to be associated with the black masses who were oppressed. We want to believe that we have this Wakandan royal connection, and that's in the struggle for liberation. Classism is one of those things that we have to confront.
Right.
In our imagery and in our depiction of Africanness, we all can't be queens and kings because we're all not. But there's nothing wrong with the fact that we're all not kings and queens. We are all African, though. We are all descendants from Africans, and that is a beautiful thing. So I'm over a minute because my husband is looking at me like, girl,
wrap it up. So anyway, but we're just so good, you know, I can say that, you know, but anyway, we just we're at that time, and we're glad that you guys you know, joined us on this discussion. We may have a part 2. I mean, I'm sure we will have a part 2, but we do want to see the movie again. Okay, anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for the comments.
Yes,
please subscribe to YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Check out our Patreon, PayPals if you like what we're doing, and to our GoFundMe, and help us with this documentary that we're working on. So anyway, tell your friends about us. We will be back on Wednesday.
Yes.
I mean Thursday.
Thursday night at 9 p.m.
At 9 p.m. Tomorrow, Pitbulls and Politics. We'll see you later. On Spreaker. All right. Have a good night. Peace out.
Peace. And as always, be really, really good to each other. Good night, y'all. Thank you for watching. Wakanda forever. Oh, we did not get to the UN speech. Oh, we got to get to that. We got to talk about that next time.